tips, to make your teaching life easier, man, I got you covered. In this video, I'm gonna go through, through the years, I wrote down different tips, different hacks to make your teaching life easier, and so I thought I'd share some of those with you here. They're in no order at all. They're very random, to be honest with you, but I know you can definitely take some away from it. And since we're doing this live here, let me just give me 1 second to put up a poll. Let's do this here. Uh, uh, uh. Um, all right, I think we are set. All right, here we go then. So let me kind of, once here's my list right here, let me kind of just go through some of the tips. I usually record them called teacher tips. So here we go. Tip number one. Well, first of all, my name is Gabriel Veal. If you don't know who I am, I've been teaching for about 20 years now, and almost middle school and high school I've been teaching. Like I said, I just through it all, I've learned a lot. So, but here we go. First tip is this: create a reward system for your class. So you want to have a reward system for your class. Now, once again, I teach middle school and high school, and so that's going to look differently if you're at elementary school. But the purpose of this reward system is to give your students something to work towards. Now, I use a reward system for behavior in my class. I have something, and actually I got this a while ago. I was watching, when I first started teaching, 20 years ago, I was on YouTube and I found something called a whole brain teaching. And the teacher had something called teacher versus students. Teacher versus students is what he had. And the teacher versus students, if students did what they're supposed to, he gave them a point. If they didn't, then he got a point. But he attached some sort of reward to it. Whatever that is, that's totally up to you. But the idea is by creating that reward system, it's a way of getting the class on your side. Now, there's always going to be those students. There are always going to be issues one way or the other. And there's always going to be students that are going to do great no matter what. But about 90% of the students, you got to kind of coerce or kind of try to find ways to motivate them to do the right thing. And that's what a reward system does. So for me, I have something called, once again, teacher versus student. And so I start out with 6 points a day. And so I'll tell my students, all right, guys, you have 6 points to start out with. If everything goes well and there's no problems, then you keep all of those points. And then I'll add that to your tally. And then once you end up with a total of 50 points, you don't have homework the next week. And so that is the reward system I have. And of course, if there's, like, for example, if students are talking or a little disruptive, I might give myself a point. And that's kind of how I work the reward system. But what that does, once again, it gets those students that sometimes will be lost, sometimes that are kind of just in the middle, not necessarily always doing good, not necessarily doing bad, but it gives them an incentive to do the right thing. So create a reward system for your class. All right, here we go. Tip number 2. Meet kids where they're at. Meet your students where they are at. And that is on 2 different levels. That is the emotional level, as well as the academic level. So let's start with the academic level, first of all. It seems like a no-brainer, right? Meet kids where they're at, meet students where they're at academically. But that takes a lot of practice to do that. It takes a lot of research to do that. It takes intentionality to do that, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find out where they're at. If you teach math, where are the levels at for math? What are they lacking? What are they missing as far as their math skills go? If it's for language arts, how's their writing? How's their reading comprehension? You're going to have to find all those things out. And this is where it gets really tricky, because if you're really trying to meet students where they're at, you're going to have a class. If you have 30 kids in your class, I teach secondary, they're going to be at all different levels. They're going to be at all different levels. And then what's going to happen is you got to adjust your teaching. You got to differentiate, is a fancy word we use here in education, your lesson to reach all those different levels. So academically, it gets really tough to do, but it is possible. And the better you are at meeting students where they're at, the more success you're going to see. So that's academically. But let's talk emotionally. Now, for me in my class, academics comes second to a student's character. I tell my students all the time that, if they fail my class, It doesn't bother me any. I mean, I like to see them succeed, but I don't define who they are by their grade. I define who they are by their character. And so, in class, there's so many different ways in which a student can display good character. And so, with that said, that is mainly what I'm looking for: is how are they carrying themselves? How are they handling themselves? What are they saying? What are they doing? But with that said, you got to meet students where they're at, emotionally, socially, and emotionally. And so this is kind of like a fine, what's the word for this here? It's hard to do because it's not so cut and dry, right? This is one of the soft skills, meeting students where they're at. But I have let's say for two different students in my class, there's one student that I can be really straightforward with, really direct with, and they can handle it emotionally. There might be another student that cannot handle it emotionally. And then on top of that, if students are going through things, once again, we are all going through things. Trust me, we're all going through things. And students, there are some horror stories of things that students are going through. So if you know something's going on with a student's life, have some grace. I mean, really have some grace. There have been deaths and there have been divorces and there's been all sorts of things students have to navigate through. And so I'll give them grace. If a parent contacts me and says, hey, I just want to let you know that there's a death in the family, I have no problem at all for a week, 2, 3, whatever it is, till the student kind of gets back on their feet to kind of excuse work. No problem at all with that. Because I mean, they're at. I know I would want the same for me. I'd want the same for my kids as well. Now, that's not to say we lower the bar. That's just say we're meeting students are at, and when they're ready to get back into it, we keep the bar where it's at, and of course we raise it so they can meet those expectations and they can grow. So meet students where they're at. That's the next step. Here we go. Tip number 3. Oh, here we go. The 10-80-10 rule. 10-80-10 rule. I was actually listening to a podcast. This is where I got this from, was a podcast. And the 10-80-10 rule goes like this: that in any organization, you're going to have 10% of the people doing what they need to do. They're not going to need any extra incentive. They're not going to need extra motivation. They're going to need anything else. They're going to show up and do what they need to do. That's 10% of the people in the organization. 10% of the people in the organization, that's a different story. They're going to be the ones that are maybe disruptive, not showing up to work, not showing up to class, whatever else. They're the 10% that are going to give you a little bit of headaches. But then you have the 80% that are in the middle. Now, what the 80% are going to do is dependent upon how you respond to both ends of those ends of the spectrum, right? It's going to depend upon what you do in your class, what routines, procedures you have, your expectations, the standards that you're holding in your class, what you're going to tolerate. Those things are going to determine what the lower 10% are going to do. So, for example, 10-80-10. I can go to any classroom, and I guarantee if a class of 30 kids, there's going to be 3 kids, no matter how ineffective the teacher is, there's going to be about 3 kids that are doing the work, that are focused and doing what they're supposed to do. That's that 10%, right? And then I guarantee I can go into the best classroom, and I'm going to see 3% of the kids maybe not doing the work, causing distractions. They're going to be doing something beyond just strictly being focused on the work. They might be off task. That's going to be at least, I don't care how good the teacher is, you're going to have about 3 kids doing that. And then you're going to have those 24 of the kids. That is what you need to focus on. That is what you got to be concerned about. That other 24 per kids, that is going to be a reflection of how good you are as a teacher. Because if you're really effective as a teacher, you're going to have that 10% always doing what they're going to do. And then you're going to have that 80% going along with the 10%. If you create the rules, boundary, procedures, all of those things in place, and you create the relationship with the students, that 80% in the middle, they're going to come over to the 10% and be effective in working and doing what they need to do. And then what you're left with is that 10%. You're left with those 3 kids in your class. And if you're really good, there's a good chance that out of those 3 kids, 2 of them, because they don't want to be left out, might kind of go over to join the rest of the group. And so if you follow the 10-80-10 rule, don't beat yourself up if there's students that aren't, don't beat yourself up if you can't just reach 3 students. You can't reach those 3 students, and no matter what you're doing, those 3 students just seem not working, they just seem off task. don't beat yourself up. That's the 10-80-10 rule playing out. All right. But your goal should be to make sure that 80% moves over to the side that is working, that is learning, and is growing. If you're doing that, you're doing everything right. So keep that in mind, the 10-80-10 rule. Whew. Let's see what else we got here. All right. Next teacher tip, have a plan put in place if a kid is absent. If a student is absent, you want to have something put in place so that way you want to have a system put in place to help that kid out if they're ever absent. When I first started teaching, here's how it would play out. A student was, and it's not just one student, right? You're going to probably have 3, 4, 5 students absent. So if the following day comes up and those 4 or 5 students come to you and say, hey, what do we miss? What can we do? If you don't have something put in place, you're going to be scrambling to make sure you get them to work. You're going to be scrambling to figure out how to help their grade out. You're going to be scrambling to see how to get them caught up. And teaching is rough to begin with. You got enough stuff to do to begin with in a normal day. But if you add the other layer on it of trying to figure out how to get those kids caught up that were absent, it's going to be very, very overwhelming. So before the first day of school, you want to have something put in place, a system put in place, so that you can take care of those kids that are absent without even having to think about it. You got to have something put in place. So for me, here's what I have put in place in my class. In my class, I have written on the board back there, extra credit. And it's always on the board. I'm always updating extra credit. And what extra credit is, it's work out of the textbook. So extra credit would basically be reading the textbook and then answering the questions. That's what my extra credit is. So students can do extra credit anytime they want. If they have a bad grade, they can do extra credit. If they have a good grade, they keep it, extra credit. If they did bad on a test, they can do extra credit. But extra credit is always on the board. But then, also on the back of my board, I have my calendar, my agenda for the week. I have the whole week laid out on the screen or on the board. So that way, students can see what's coming up, and they can see also what they might have missed if they were absent. And so if they were absent, they would just look on the board to see what they missed. So just so they have a reference. But then, here's the key. To make up those missing points, to make up that missing assignment, they're not going to come to me and ask me, hey, how do I do the notes? Or can I get a copy of the missing notes? Or can I get the worksheet? Or can I watch the video that you guys did? The answer is no. That's what we did. You missed it. And it'd be too hard to kind of get you all that material again. But what you can do is extra credit. And if you do extra credit, those points that you earn from extra credit, I will apply it towards the missing assignment. And so the nice thing about this extra credit, it's nothing I have to create. It's already all there. It's out of the book, and the kids are familiar with it. They know what to do. And the other part about it is this, that since kids know it, they can just come in and do the work. And there's nothing I have to give them to get them caught up. Plus, the extra credit actually goes along with what we're learning about. So if we're learning about the Civil War, the pages out of the book that students would have to read and answer questions are about the Civil War. So it's not busy work, it's not wasted learning, it's actually reinforcing what we learned and what they might have missed. So have something put in place though, whatever your system is, so that way if a kid is absent, they can quickly get caught back up again without you having to recreate the wheel for them. Next teacher tip. Create a culture and create a supportive culture in your class. I just had an interview here recently, and one of the questions I thought was going to come up was, how do you create connections with the students, or how do you create a culture in your first of all, to create relations with students, and with anybody. If you want to have a bond with somebody, the bond is created by sharing experiences, right? So my family, what we have is almost every night we sit around the dinner table and we have that experience of eating together. I give my wife credit for that one, by the way. Without her, that never would have happened. But we take vacations together. I have 3 kids and my wife, and we take vacations together. And when we sit around and talk and reminisce, we talk about all those things that we've done, our trips that we've taken, the experiences that we've shared together. Those shared experiences create a bond, a relationship between me and my family. That's the same thing in your classroom. To create that bond, the relationship with your students, it's going to be shared experiences. And that can come in all different variety of ways. It could just simply come from being in the class together, taking notes together, having classroom discussions, different activities, different things you kind of maybe do outside the box. I remember one time I actually had a rock band. I brought that in a long time ago. So all these different things, these shared experiences create this connection with students and creates this relationship. But that's like the foundation of culture. But here's what I've learned, and once I got this from a podcast, and I thought it was brilliant. A culture of an organization is not created by the goals of the organization, it's created by what is tolerated. Let me try one more time. The culture of an organization is based upon not the goals that are set, but the behavior that is tolerated. And when I heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, that is a class. Because in a class, I don't know how many times I've heard teachers, or if you're a student, you heard your teachers say, class, this is what we're going to do. This is our expectations for the class. This is how I want you to be. But if behavior is outside of that, and it's not addressed, and it's being accepted and tolerated, I guess is a way of saying it, then it ruins the culture. So behavior, what you're accepting as behavior, what your tolerated behavior is going to determine the culture of your school or culture of your classroom. So for example, in my class, one thing that I quickly put a stop to is there's any kind of bullying. If I see any kind of bullying going on, any kind of being made fun of going on, one way or the other, I quickly put a stop to it. Because if I let that go and I tolerate that behavior, it's only going to grow and get worse. And then students get the message that this is not a safe place to be in my class. And so the culture of your classroom is not set by what your goals are, what your hopes are, your expectations. They are set by what you're going to tolerate in your class. So if you make sure you know exactly what you're going to accept and nothing more, nothing less, that's it. You know you've got this boundary set and you adhere to that boundary. And then you have this shared experience with students. Those two things together will create a winning culture in your class. Next teacher tip, let's keep them going. Here we go. First year teachers, don't get discouraged. How can I say this? I saw when I first started teaching 20 years ago, I saw this graph. And it really changed the way I looked at things. And I saw this graph, and what it did, it talked about how many years someone's teaching, and then also showed when teachers quit. And what the graph showed is, by year 5, half the teachers quit the occupation. By year 5, half the teachers quit. Now, when most people see it, they go, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And don't be wrong, that is kind of bad. It just shows you how hard teaching is. But when I looked at that graph, what I saw, I said, oh my gosh, if I can make it to year 5, because basically by year 5, it kind of just plateaued out. So if you made it to year 5, you're pretty much in it for life or for a long time. And when I saw that graph, I said, that's it. If I can make it to year 5, then I can make this a career. And the hard part is making it to year 5, because there's this huge learning curve when you're a brand new teacher. It took me more than 5 years. It took me 7 years to finally get comfortable in the classroom. 7 years. That's a long time to get comfortable in the classroom. But it took me 7 years to finally get comfortable in the classroom. But when I finally did, man, it became the best job, career I could ever ask for, right? But it took me a while to get there. Most teachers, it don't take 7 years, probably takes 5 years, maybe even 3 years. But whatever it takes you, just know there's this learning curve. And those first couple of years as teaching, they are going to be exhausting. I mean, you're going to be worn out. You're going to be physically worn out, mentally worn out, emotionally worn out. And in all honesty, if I was to give you some solid advice, if you're a brand new teacher, for the first year, 2, and 3, I would not think it was unreasonable to put 10-hour days in, at least 10-hour days. Because this learning curve, the quicker you go through that learning curve, the better it's going to get. right? And so if you put the hours in, you put the effort in up front, that means you're gonna get to that point where things become easier a lot quicker. So once again, if I was to talk to my younger self, I would tell myself, hey, 10 hours, 12 hours, commit to that. Commit to that for the first year, 2 years. It's going to be exhausting. You're going to wear yourself out. But if you can do that, you're going to grow at an exponential rate. And then you're going to be able to make it to those 5 years. But there's this huge learning curve that all teachers need to go through. So just know that going into it. If you're a brand new teacher, don't get discouraged. Hang in there. And once again, every day, learn something new and apply something new. And before you know it, by year 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you're going to have this down. And you're going to be one of those master teachers that you always hear about. Let's keep it going. Here we go. Next teacher tip is seems so easy. Wear something comfortable. I always walk around with my Fitbit on, and I have my Fitbit when I go to work as well. And I easily put on 5 miles a day just at work, right? Just walking around the classroom, walking back and forth from different classes and walking around the campus and all that. That's a lot of miles. I mean, well, I'm not sure it's a lot of miles, but 5 miles, right? So you want to wear something comfortable. I always had this goal to wear suits. I like the way suits look on me. I would love to wear suits. And I always thought, when I first started teaching, I thought, I'm gonna dress real nice, I'm gonna wear these suits, I'm gonna wear these ties. But I live here in Southern California, and it gets hot. In the summertime, we're talking over 100 degrees in the summertime, right? And so to wear suits to school was kind of very impractical. I would like to because it looks nice. But even with the air conditioner, if I have a suit on, even with the air conditioner, man, I am sweating within the first 5 minutes because I'm walking around that class, right? So early on, suits kind of went out the way. But the more I started teaching, the more comfortable I got in the classroom, I just realized being comfortable is more important than kind of looking real sharp. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't want to wear anything crazy, outrageous, right? Still somewhat decent. But I would dress for comfortability over fashion. Because if you're walking around the classroom and you're monitoring things and you're doing things, if you're not comfortable, it's going to be hard to keep up that pace, right? So I always got tennis shoes on. In the winter, you got tennis shoes and jeans and a short sleeve. In the summertime, are kind of more, when it's hotter here in Southern California, I even wear shorts. I even wear shorts to school, tennis shoes, shorts, and a shirt, something like this. But whatever that is for you, if you have to make a choice between style and comfort, as a teacher, I would choose comfort. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to maintain you work in that classroom and walk in that classroom, and just hard to keep up that pace. All right, let's see what we got next here. This also was something really nice for me. It's kind of a game changer for me. Probably about 5 years ago, I got myself a desk riser. I'm not sure if you know what those are. They basically go on your desk and they kind of rise up. So what's nice about that is I can now stand and do my work, right? I can stand. So if I'm at my desk, instead of sitting, I'm now standing. Now, most people have it because they like, to feel more active and everything else. But in all honesty, the reason I have it is because I'm better able to monitor my class if I'm standing. Because if I'm sitting down in my seat and I'm working on the computer as the class is doing something, it is just harder to monitor them. One is because it's hard to get out of the seat, it's harder to get to the front door, it's harder to take care of a question if I need to get up, right? And also my view is just not as good. But if I am standing, I have a much better view of everything. I can respond to things much quicker. And plus just, it kind of gives that, to the students, they see it as a way of me always being active, right? And so I'm always on point. And so I would definitely, if you get a chance, get yourself a desk riser. Here we go. Being tired is normal. There's tired, and then there's teacher tired. Being tired is, and I've talked to the people about this. Why is it? I mean, because I start school at 7:30, all right, 7:30, and we basically go till 2 o'clock. That's it, all right? So what is that, 6.5 hours? Why is that at the end of 6.5 hours, I'm so exhausted. Us teachers are so exhausted. Now, I broke it down, and here's what I realized. The reason we're so exhausted is because we are on point. We are 100% in the zone. We are attentive. We cannot put our guard down for 6.5 hours. You just can't. My wife, several years ago, did doggy daycare. And I got to tell you, that was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. It taught me so much. But she did doggy daycare where people would bring their dogs over to our house. And I believe the max dogs we had in our house at one particular time was like 14 dogs, 4 of our own, 10 other ones. 14 dogs. Could you imagine having 14 dogs in your house? And we're talking everything from a little dog like this to a big dog like a Great Dane, pit bulls, and everything in between. We just had all sorts of dogs everywhere. 14 dogs. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so, but the beautiful thing about it is those dogs got along. And my wife had an incredible system put in place. Anytime a new dog would join our pack, what she would do is she would first walk the dog by itself to kind of drain some of the energy, right? And then we would do a pack walk. We walked the pack of dogs that we had with the new dog, so the dog gets acquainted. We got this from Cesar Millan, by the way. We love Cesar Millan. And so we do a pack walk. So now we introduce the dog to the overall, with the other pack, and we walk it all together, right? Maybe do about a 20-minute walk with that. And they come back to the house, and now they're all getting along. And so, but what I notice is my wife, according to Cesar Millan, and I believe this to be true, that if you're not the pack leader, what's going to happen is another dog's going to take that role. And if another dog takes the role, that's when you're going to see domination, dominant behavior, and you're going to have all sorts of problems and fights break out and everything else. And so my wife had to be the dominant person in the family with those dogs in the pack. But that requires her to always be on point. That requires her to have her full attention in it, to be in the moment. That requires her to always be aware of what's going on, and that's draining. And then now as a teacher, I realized that we do the same thing. As teachers, we cannot let our guard down, because how easy is it that if you zone out for a few minutes, something bad can happen. Student can say something to somebody else. Student can, throw something, do something, right? So we always got to be on point. We got to be aware of what's going on in our classroom. But then there's also the emotional part of it as well. We have to be on point emotionally. I have 30 kids in a class, 5 periods. That's 150 kids. That's 150 different emotions that I'm having to deal with in one day. And I got to be on my game for it, right? There's going to be students who are going to be happy, excited, depressed, you name it. And so I got to be able to interact with all those. And so at the end of the day, when you put all that energy in, the physical energy in, of being attentive 100%, the emotional energy in, the mental energy in, because you're always creating, you're thinking about the lessons and you're teaching this and that, 6.5 hours is a long time to do all that. So of course, teachers, us, we're going to be exhausted at the end of a day, because once again, we're putting all ourselves into this career. Next one, here we go. Next teacher tip is carry through on what you say. Carry through on what you say. Almost all teachers start off the same way, right? Almost all teachers start the year off the same way, sharing our expectations, our rules, and our procedures, right? We kind of almost all do that. But what you're going to see is by week 2, 3, 4, you're going to see which teachers are actually consistent with all that. Because if you can say whatever you want to say, but what students are going to respond to is not what you're saying, it's what you're doing, right? It's not what you say, it's what you do. And so with that thought in mind, you have to carry through on what you say. If you say, hey, you got to raise your hand before before you talk or share an answer, you got to carry that through. Because if you don't, and you let it go, before you know it, you lost that part of your routines. You got to carry out on what you say. So at the beginning of the year in my class, we go through everything: routines, policies, procedures. We go through all of that, right? That's the first day, that's the first week in my class. But what's more important than that is what I do after that. So I make sure that I adhere to exactly what I tell the students. Because if I don't, students are going to quickly pick up on that. And then students are going to know what they can and cannot get away with. And so everything you talked about goes out the window. So once again, whatever you say you're going to do, carry through with it. If you say you're going to call home, carry through on calling home. If you say you're going to send a student to the office, carry through on that. If you say you're going to take a phone, carry through on that. If you say, hey, you guys are going to earn a reward if you do this, make sure you carry out on the reward. Whatever you say, make sure you follow through all the way. Next teacher tip, here we go. I learned this the very first year I'm in school. If you're walking around the campus, walk with a folder, right? That's it. If you walk around the campus, walk with a folder. And so first year as teaching, I had another teacher, veteran teacher, actually tell this to me. And by the way, since we are live here, just want to say, how you doing there? How you doing? I don't got your name, Kevu Lo. I don't know if I can say what that is. I'm not even going to try, but welcome, welcome. Hey, if you have any questions for a teacher, just feel free to put in there. I'll answer whatever I can answer, okay? But while waiting for that, once again, the teacher said, he was a veteran teacher, and he said, walk with a folder. I said, why? He goes, because think about this. If you're just walking around the campus, it's going to look like you're doing nothing, right? It looks like you have no purpose. It looks like you're just wasting time. And that's the last image you want to portray to your administration, somebody else, is that you're just wasting time, right? And so, okay, if you have a question, man, throw it up there. I'll be more happy to see if I can answer it for you, okay? But if you walk with a folder, it looks like you have a purpose. It looks like you're doing something. It looks like you're going to a meeting. And the reality is, you don't necessarily have to have a folder. You can just have something in your hands. But if you're portraying the image that you're actually doing something and that you're actually going to a meeting or have something productive going on, it changes everything. So something so simple as that, definitely walk with a folder. All right, let's see here. How to study for a class, 10 exams. All right, Kate. Well, let's see how to study for a class, 10 exams. Now, help me out on this one. I'm not even sure class 10 exams. Is that a certain kind of exam you're studying for, or just how to study in general? So if you're looking at how to study in general, first of all, no one likes studying. I mean, you want to keep that in mind. And some students are better at tests than other tests and other students, right? So, but if you're looking to study for something and you want to do really, if you are serious about really doing well on something, you want to break up that study, right? So here we go. Okay, all right. So here's my advice for you. If you're looking to how to study, the best thing to do, first of all, you got to know what's on the test. If you can figure that out, a lot of times teachers will give you a study guide. A lot of times you can say some sort of different researches, resources out there to tell you what's going to be on the exam. Yeah, good job, by the way. 89 is a really good job. Looks like you actually know how to study already. So, but if you're looking to study, the best thing to do is know what's on the test, or have an idea what's going to be on the test. And then once you have an idea what's going to be on the test, break it up. Study a little bit at a time. It's amazing how much more you're able to retain with that. So I would plan on studying for about a week out. If you got a big test coming up, a week before, really start studying. Commit some time to it and study a little bit. And then what you're going to do, you're going to study some information, and then you're going to go back the following day and study that again, plus a little bit more. So you're going to kind of build upon what you're learning. But I'll be honest with you, man, if you're getting 89%, that's a really good score to start off with. But for me, any kind of time I had to study for something, that's how I would do it. I'd plan a week out ahead. I have a good idea what's going to be on the test. If I know what's going to be on the test, and then from there, I was kind of like how I do with my lesson, a backward plan. Right? I study a little bit at a time, and then I go back, study that again, get it reinforced, and study a little bit more, and just kind of keep building upon that. So for me, that's the best way I found to study. But the reality is this: for my students, every time I ask my students how many study, man, I would say only about 3 actually do. Back to the whole 10% of it, Well, thank you very much for that compliment. I appreciate it very much, Gabriel. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. I don't know how to say that. But hopefully I'm saying your name right. But thank you for that compliment. All right. Renee. How you doing, Renee? Glad to see you on here as well. Uh, all right. So here we go. Next teacher tip. Once you have a question, throw it up there. I'll do the best I can to answer your question. But here we go. Next teacher tip. A better you means a better teacher. A better you means a better teacher. Oh man. So there's certain things. Here's the thing. Teachers, we're all different. We're all different. I mean, I look at my campus. I have 40 teachers on my campus, and we're all so different. Some have more skills than others. We teach different subjects, but even the way we conduct a class is different, right? Now, there are some things. Thank you very much. I know the dog's cute here. There are some things that you got to do in a class. I mean, there are some things that are kind of like just bread and butter that you have to do. You want to make sure you do so you can run your class effectively, such as routines, warm-up routines. I have so many different warm-up routines in my class and procedures in my class. You want to have those down. You want to have a grading system down. There's certain things as a teacher you want to have down for sure. You got it. You got to have it down. But then you got to bring your own style to it, your own you to it. Whatever that is, I guarantee if you come to my class, it's different than you go in someone else. We've both been teaching 20 years, something like that, but how we teach the material is different. My partner teacher next to me, he teaches history. He's been teaching about 15 years. We cover the same material, but how we do it is different. And so you got to find your own style. You got to find out what works best with you. But with that said, here's the other part of it. You got to work on being a better you. A better you means a better teacher. Because if you had a bad morning, if you had a bad day, if you're going through something, if you're not happy with who you are, that's going to come out in the classroom one way or the other. Now, you do your best to try to separate. You do your best to try to, not have your personal life affect your professional life. But we're all human, right? We're all human, and things are gonna happen that way. And so, if you work on being a better version of yourself, whatever that means to you, physically, mentally, emotionally, what you're gonna see is that's gonna translate to you being a better teacher. Now, you're still gonna have to go through that learning curve. You're still gonna have to learn a lot of different things. There's still so much you gotta figure out as a teacher. But I promise you, a better you means a better teacher. And so don't neglect that. Don't neglect that part at all. Because the moment you start neglecting you, the moment you stop feeding your energy, the moment you stop learning, the moment you stop growing, that's the moment that as a teacher, the same thing is going to happen. So once again, a better you, a better version of you means a better version as a teacher. So always work on improving who you are as a person. You ready, Rocky? What's our next one here? Let's keep going, right? All right. Oh, have a calendar. Have a calendar. Michaela, let me see what you put here real fast before you jump to the calendar. Thank you, Michaela, for those wonderful words, by the way. I appreciate it. Thank you. Michaela, you are awesome. Thank you so much. So here we go. Have a calendar. What I mean by a calendar is in the back of my room, I have on my board is the week planned out. And I broke it up 3 different ways. So I break it up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But then I also break it up into 3 different sections. What we're going to learn about, what we're going to do, and how students know they've learned the material. And so once again, my calendar in the back of my board, that I have, it has the days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then once again, it's broken up into what students are going to learn, what we're going to do, and as well as how students are going to know that. Renee, thank you for those words. I appreciate that. And so that calendar, the reason why that's so important is because, first of all, it helps your students know what we already covered or what we're going to be learning. And if they've missed a day, it helps them as well. Let's see. Renee, what has been your best expert tip in a class? And Corey, hey Corey, man, I'm glad to see you're here, Corey. Renee, I'm gonna get to that in 1 second. Corey, man, it's been a while, hasn't it? Hope you're doing good over there in Florida. You can tell I'm getting old. I have to get closer to the camera to see what you're writing here. Hey, Corey, thank you for those words, man. Corey, by the way, Corey was one of my mentees and one of the teachers that we worked together with in his classroom, helping his classroom. And hey, Corey, man, thank you so much for first taking that class, by the way, the classroom manager class. I really appreciate it. And just thank you for all the feedback you've given me. It was just nice to know that I'm able to make a contribution in a good way. So I thank you always for the encouragement you give me, Corey. I really appreciate it. Renee, the best tip, the best advice I ever got, the best thing that I've ever came across in my class that I've implemented, teacher, was a seating chart. Now, not just a seating chart. I mean, obviously I have a seating chart where students are going to be at, a seating chart where, that substitute comes in, they can see where, students are at. But the seating chart, I got this from the teacher when I first started 20 years ago. His name is Mr. B, Mr. Barrios, his name is. And he showed me his seating chart, and it kept track of everything. And I said, why do you always walk around? It's on a clipboard. I said, why do you always walk around the clipboard? He goes, what's my seating chart? But I'm always making notes on my seating chart. And what happens is, by having that clipboard, it held students accountable. Even though he may not be taking notes every single time, the students were always thinking he was taking notes one way or the other. And because of that, students' behavior was much, much better. And so that's one of the things I took away from Mr. B was that seating chart. Now, through the years, I've definitely changed it, I modified it, I updated it and everything else. But my seating chart now is the foundation of my class. If you ever come to my class, you're gonna see me walk around with this seating chart, right? And that's purpose of the seating chart, once again, is of course to keep, take attendance and see where kids are at. But on that seating chart, I keep track of behavior on it. I keep track of how many times a student uses a hall pass. I keep track if they participate, extra credit points. I keep track of electronic devices. On there also, I keep track if there's any modifications I have to give them, if they have an IEP, if they're a Spanish speaker. I have all that on a quick reference on my seating chart. And so at any particular moment, I can look at it and get a reflection of what's going on in my class. And so, Renee, for me, that has probably been the best thing I've ever come across, the best thing I've implemented in my class is that seating chart. And you don't, of course, have to go quite as crazy as I do with on it. But for any teachers out there, man, the seating chart is a great, it is the battle plans before the battle, right? With a good seating chart, you can eliminate problems before they even happen by placing students in correct spots, either for support or either because of behavior. By doing that, you can eliminate problems before they even begin. So a seating chart is probably the most effective thing I've ever come across. Lola, it is a new, welcome Lola, by the way. It is a new paper every day, Lola. What do you mean by that? You mean, are you talking about you have to write a new paper every day? By the way, if you have to write a research paper every day or a paper every day, man, of all my skills that I have, writing is my worst. Actually, penmanship is my worst skill I have. I have some of the worst writing possible, penmanship-wise. But actual writing itself, oh man, I have a hard time with writing itself. But Lola, if you have a new paper every day, man, that can be difficult because, man, it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work writing is. So hopefully that's not what you're referring to there. All right, next teacher tip. Shall we keep going, dog? Let's do this here. Here you go. Find yourself a buddy teacher. Here's what I mean by a buddy teacher. Oh, Lola, here we go. Are you writing on the same seating chart every day? Ah, Lola, thank you for the clarification. Yes, Lola, regarding my seating chart, am I writing on the same seating chart every day? Absolutely. So what I do is I have a seating chart and I write it on every day. And so my seating chart, depends how technical you want to get on it, but I do keep track of it every day. So every day I have the same seating chart, I'm writing on it. But then what I do, because at the end of the week it's could get kind of messy with all my marks on it for participation, marks on it for behavior. So at the end of the week, what I'll do is I will update my seating chart and print out a new one. So I have this little template I have. It's a spreadsheet. Used to be Excel, now it's Google Sheets. But I have this spreadsheet with the seating chart on it. And so at the end of the week, I'll take the information from the seating chart and I'll put it on the Google Sheet, and then I'll print myself out a new seating chart. So every week, I'm updating that seating chart. So that way it looks clean. I mean, I could keep the same one for several weeks, but usually what I find out is almost every week there seems to be a new student being added in the class or a student that's leaving. So usually every week's a good pace for me to kind of update things and print out a new one. Thank you, Lola, for that clarification there. Anything else I can help you out with there? If so, please put it in the chat. I'd be more than happy to help out. Thank you, Lola. All right. Next up, buddy teacher, right? Oh, so a buddy teacher. Here you go. And Lola, by the way, I'm not sure if you follow my YouTube channel. If you are, find my email there. Send me an email, and I can always, if you're looking for a seating chart, I can always send the template I have of the seating chart. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you can always find somewhere on there my email, and send me an email. I'll send you the template I have for my seating chart if it's helpful for you at all. All right, there we go. Find yourself a buddy teacher. What I mean by that is a teacher that, for example, I teach 8th grade history. I have this teacher right next to me. He also teaches 8th grade history. And so we're always in step as far as our lesson goes, right? We're in step as far as the lesson goes. We're always checking each other. Thank you, Lola. I appreciate it. And if there's anything else I can do in the meantime, like I said, just find me email somewhere, send me email. I'll be more than happy to help out, okay? And so the teacher next to me, we teach the same thing. And what we always try to connect with is on our tests. We want to make sure that we have the same kind of tests, right? So we're in step that way. Now, how we teach material is a little different, but we have the same tests to start out with, and then how we teach is a little different, right? So I have a buddy teach that way. But the other kind of buddy teacher you want to have is one for behavior, because here's what's going to happen. Something's going to happen in your class. I guarantee if you're teaching, there's going to be some behavior issues in your class. And sometimes you can deal with it in class. Most of the time I can deal with the behavior in class. But once in a while I have to send a student out of my class. Now I have the option to send them to the office, all right? But the problem with that is if the office sees there's a lot of students coming to them, here's the other part of it. Once I send a student out of my class to the office, any kind of discipline that I could have issued, any kind of authority I have, I'm now transferring that over to the office. And I'm basically having the office deal with it. So what that does, it kind of takes it out of my hands. Sometimes, which is good. Sometimes it needs to be out of my hands, right? But it takes it out of my hands as far as how I'm able to discipline or how I'm able to correct the behavior. And I give that responsibility to somebody else. Sometimes I need to do that, and sometimes you're going to need to do that. But the next thing you can do before you get to that point, before you can actually get to that point, because a lot of times the office doesn't want all the students. If the office has, every teacher sending up students, a period, they're going to quickly overwhelm. And you don't want that reputation of always sending students to the office. And so if you have a buddy teacher, what that can do, it allows you the time to send a student out of your class to another classroom. Now, if you know there's going to be a problem, if you know the student's not going to make the classroom, you know they're going to cause disruption in the classroom, that's a different story, right? But if let's say things are escalating a little bit in your class and you just need to get that student out before they take it up a next level or before you take it next level. If you have a buddy teacher, you can say, hey, just go next door to Mr. So-and-so, right? And then they can go to the next door to Mr. So-and-so. What that does, it gives you time to de-escalate. It gives the student time to de-escalate. It doesn't mean that you're transferring the responsibility to the other teacher. It just gives you both that little bit of break that you need so you can deal with the problem. Because the worst thing you can do is have it escalate. And trust me, It happened many times with me, and it never turned out well, right? So by having that buddy teacher, you can send them to that buddy teacher. And when you send them to the buddy teacher, you want to have that system put in place. You want to have something put in place where you send that student with something. So for example, in our school, we have a reflection, it's called reflection sheet. And so what will happen is, there's a problem in my class with a student, and there's a behavior problem in my class, and I can't just handle it in my class. I got to get rid of them before I send the office. I'll send them over next door to my buddy teacher, and I send them with a reflection sheet of what's going on. I say, go over there, fill this out. Or maybe I give them some work. Go over there, do the work, all right? And so they go next door, they do the work, they do the reflection sheet. And before the period's up, the buddy teacher, and this is also if you want to work out ahead of schedule, the buddy teacher will send them back to me. And at that point in time, I can deal with the behavior. The students calm down, I calm down, they're taking out the situation, things don't escalate, and then we can deal with the situation at that point in time. But if you don't have that buddy teacher, your only recourse is send them to the office, and you don't want to get into the habit of doing that all of the time. So if you can find yourself a buddy teacher, it's going to give that little intermediate, it's going to give a little thing in between to help you to solve the situation. All right. Almost done, everybody. Almost done. A few more, then we're going to call this done here. This goes along with it. Next teacher tip, don't lose your cool. That kind of goes along with the buddy teacher, right? Don't lose your cool. First of all, it will not end well. It will not end well. Trust me, teaching 20 years, there's plenty of times where I've lost my cool. And not once did it help the situation at all. So first of all, don't lose your cool, because sometimes that's what the student wants. There are some students out there that are trying to get you to lose your cool. They're trying to poke you. They're trying to rattle your cage. They want to try to get a reaction from you. Now, not all the students, but there are some students that are doing that. And if they get that reaction from you they're looking for, then they win, right? They win. Because whatever they're trying to do, maybe they're talking, maybe they're being disrespectful, maybe they're on a cell phone, but if they're doing it to get a response from you, and you give them that response by losing your cool, no good will come from it, right? So you don't want to lose your cool for that reason. But the other thing is, let's say a student's not necessarily trying to get your gopher, right? They're really not trying to poke you, but things are just escalating one way or the other. By you losing your cool, it's gonna feel good in that moment, and it's gonna solve that moment. It's gonna solve for that moment. But the message it sends is more destructive than what it might have solved in that moment. So I'll give you an example. Early years is teaching. Class is talking. I'm trying to get the class attention. They're being disruptive and distracting and everything else. And finally, I say, hey, just shut up, settle down, right? And I just yell it, right? I lose my cool, I yell it. The class gets quiet because they're expecting me to do that, right? They get quiet, they all get quiet. And for that moment, I thought, perfect, fine, this is what I wanted. But what I quickly realized is that silence only lasted for about a minute. That's about it. And then the class starts talking again. And if the only way I'm able to get the class under control is by yelling at them, then what's my recourse? Yell at them again? And every time I want to give my class attention, I yell at them. There's no good outcome to it. And it sends the message to your students that this person's out of control. They don't have control of the class. They don't have control of themselves, right? So losing your cool never is a good way to go. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm not saying it hasn't happened to me. But if I can try to control it, do the best you can. I'll try to control it. Don't lose your cool. Almost there. Next one, here we go. Expert teacher tip. Next one is this. When it comes to lesson planning, create a plug and play system. We might end with this one because this is a very important one for lesson planning. First of all, I'm going to give you a big picture on lesson planning here. I'm going to call it my plug and play system. In fact, if you ever go to my YouTube channel, I created it's like a 2-hour video of exactly so if you're looking to lesson plan and you're trying to figure out how to lesson plan and what it takes and how you should do it, man, I went into details on this one video. So if you go to my YouTube channel, it's about 2 hours on there. I think it's something about, master lesson planning. You'll find it, lesson planning. But I'm going to sum it up here for you in about 5 minutes. So that 2-hour video is. So the first thing you want to do is take a step back, right? and think of yourself, what do I want students to learn? That's where you want to start with. What do I want students to learn? And the first thing I always do is create my test. So I got my test. What do I want students to learn? I create my tests. All right? So now I know I want students to learn. That's what I start with. And then I will start my planning. I plan in units. So I'll plan in 3 weeks chunks of time. That's usually what a unit is. So I teach United States history, Civil War. I will plan a Civil War unit out for about 3 weeks. Sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're longer, but on average about 3 weeks. Now I got a 3-week unit that I'm going to plan all at once. All at once. All right? So I know what I want students to learn. I got 3 weeks to teach the students that. That's my unit. Now the next question is, how am I going to go about doing that? How am I going to teach students this material? And what I've created over the years is a plug and play system. Here's what I mean by that. There are certain things I do in almost every unit. Almost every unit I have, I want students to get information. The best way I found to give students information were notes. All right? And so every unit I have notes. And notes are different, of course, based upon the material, right? But what is the same is notes. I'm going to do notes for a unit. Another thing I do for a unit is Edpuzzles. If you don't know what that is, that's phenomenal. It's a video that where you can insert questions in that students have to answer as they're watching the video. And so almost every unit I have has Edpuzzles in it. So now almost every unit has notes. Almost every unit has Edpuzzles in it. And the next thing I do is some kind of, I guess, study guide or some kind of review. And so for me, that might be a study guide, or the next best thing I found, actually the best thing I found for a study guide at this point in time, I used to use something called Kahoot, but now I use something called Blooket. So I use that as a review. So almost every unit I teach has those three things in it. Has notes, it has a review of a Blooket, and it has Edpuzzles. I call that my plug and play system. Then what I got a 3-week period of time, I mark out what, maybe days I can't teach it because maybe there's something going on or whatever else. But then when I find out what I'm working with, I plug in those three things in an organized or in a logical fashion, right? I usually start with maybe Edpuzzles that talks about information. Maybe the Edpuzzle talks about battles of Civil War. And then the next thing is about notes about the Civil War, right? And so they make so that they're connected all together. So now I got a 3-week unit. I plug those items in. Plug and play system. I plug in my Edpuzzles, my notes, and then my review. And then what I'm left with are maybe a couple days each week. That is when I go into my activities. The activities reinforce it. So the Edpuzzles front loads the information. The notes is the information, and we have discussions with those notes, right? So we're working with that. And then finally, the activity reinforces and works with the information. So guys, the flow kind of goes Edpuzzles, notes, and then an activity. Edpuzzle, notes, activity. It's a plug and play system because, and the activity, depending upon what I'm teaching, it differs, right? And throughout the years, I've come up with activities I see work. And as you're teaching, you're gonna find activities that work and don't work. And what works, you keep. What doesn't work, you put aside and grab something else. But if you create this plug and play system, what you're going to realize is you're not recreating the wheel every single unit, every week. You're not recreating. You have certain things you're going to do over and over again. And they're going to be done in order. They're going to be organized, and it's going to have a nice flow to it. And so by creating that plug and play system, it is going to give you some sort of purpose. It's going to just take a weight off you when it comes to lesson planning. All right, so let me just recap that one more time. So the plug and play system works this way. You start with a unit, know what you're going to teach, create the test. And then you want to have a way to give students the information. For me, that is notes. And then you want to have a way of students to work with information. For me, that's activities. And then you have a way to review the information. For me, that's Blooket. And if you follow that nice pattern to it, it's going to have a nice flow. It's going to have information. It's going to front load. They're going to get information. They're going to work the information. And then by the end of the unit, you cover the material you wanted to in a fashion that is logical and in a fashion that is the most effective as possible. All right. Well, hey, I want to say thank you for tuning into this live stream. Also, if you're watching the video here, thank you for taking time to watch the video. Like I said, I'm going to try to do this. No promises, but I'm going to try to do this on a regular basis right around this time here. So feel free to tune in later on. And thank you for your support.